Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth in our series of studies with Ranga. Today we are on Essays on the Gita, page 103, the Yoga of the Intelligent Will. So Ranga, can you start for us with maybe a summary, because we've been away for quite a while.
It's not that the chapter, page 103 in SAPCL. So we are actually in the chapter Works and Sacrifice.
Oh.
So your page will be different. Okay, I'll give a small introduction to what is being said. So, the Gita is being interpreted, the words niyata karma and kartavyam karma, the Gita is being interpreted in a wrong way by some people. So Srimad is discussing that. There are many who feel that when the Gita is talking of niyata karma, okay, niyatam in Sanskrit has got two meanings. Okay, one is controlled action, okay, and the other meaning is the normal action that you should do. Okay, so normal action, the regular action. So those who believe in the Vedas, they say that you should do the work that you are already doing, which is your profession. Eh? The works that you should do, you are doing that. But niyatam is not that. Niyatam in the Gita means controlled action, not the specific action that you are doing. Yeah. Clear? So that's a discussion being done. The first interpretation is whatever you have to do, you do. Okay? If you have to take you are a teacher, then you teach. But that's not the meaning. The meaning is whatever you are doing, it has to be controlled. The root is yam, controlled action. In other words, your action, you are master of your own action. That's what it means. So now the paragraph that we are going to read is desireless action possible? Okay, that's what he's going to discuss. Okay, desireless action. So, I am reading the paragraph and then we will discuss it. The difficulty is this: how our nature being what it is and desire the common principle of its action, is it possible to institute a really desireless action? Can man really do desireless action? That's a question being discussed. For what we call ordinarily disinterested action is not really desireless. It is simply a replacement of certain smaller personal interests by other larger desires which have only the appearance of being impersonal. Virtue, country, mankind. We will discuss in detail. I am just reading the whole para first. All action, moreover, as Krishna insists, is done by the gunas of Prakriti, by our nature. As Krishna insists, is done, all action, moreover, as Krishna insists, is done by the gunas of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, by our nature. It is nature that is making you do all actions. In acting according to the Shastra, we are still acting according to our nature. Even if this Shastric action is not, as it usually is, a mere cover for our desires, prejudices, passions, egoisms, our personal, national, sectarian vanities, sentiments and preferences. But even otherwise, even at the purest, still we obey a choice of our nature. And if our nature were different and the gunas acted on our intelligence and will in some other combination, we would not accept the Shastra, but live according to our pleasure or our intellectual notions, or else break free from the social law to live the life of the solitary or the ascetic. We cannot we cannot become impersonal by obeying something outside ourselves, for we cannot so get outside ourselves. We can only do it by rising to the highest in ourselves, into our free soul and self, which is the same and one in all, and has therefore no personal interest, to the divine in our being, who possesses himself transcendent of cosmos and is therefore not bound by his cosmic works or his individual action. That is what the Gita teaches, and desirelessness is only a means to this end, not an aim in itself. Yes, but how is it to be brought about? By doing all works with sacrifice as the only object, is the reply of the divine teacher. By doing works otherwise than for sacrifice, this world of men is in bondage to works. For sacrifice, practice works, O son of Kunti, becoming free from all attachment. It is evident that all works and not merely sacrifice and social duties can be done in the spirit. Any action may be done either from the ego sense, narrow or enlarged, or for the sake of the divine. All being and all action of Prakriti exist only for the sake of the divine. From that it proceeds, by that it endures, to that it is directed. But so long as we are dominated by the ego sense, we cannot perceive or act in the spirit of this truth, but act for the satisfaction of the ego and in the spirit of the ego, otherwise than for sacrifice. Egoism is a knot of the bondage. By acting Godwards without any thought of ego, we loosen this knot and finally arrive at freedom. So, this is the paragraph. The discussion is desireless action. So, we will have a look at what he is saying carefully. The difficulty is this: how our nature being what it is, and desire the common principle of its action, is it possible to institute a really desireless action? That's a question. He is answering the question in the para. Okay. So, is it possible to act without desire? That's the whole question. Normally, what you would think is that it is desire that makes you do certain things. If you have a motive and a desire, then you do things according to that. If there is no desire, then action is not possible. That's a normal understanding of human psychology. Okay?
But I would ask you, those who say, I have an aspiration to do this, is aspiration covering up the word desire?
See, desire is directed towards an object, right? I want to eat this. So, I want to have good clothes. Your desire is being directed to clothes or food. If you direct it to the divine, then it becomes aspiration.
That is what?
Then your desire, if it is directed to a God, it becomes an aspiration.
Ah, very good.
If it is directed to an aim in life, it may be nobler than being directed to either food or clothes, but it is still a desire. So, aspiration also is a desire fundamentally, but you have to change the object of the desire. Okay, that's it. And the Karma Yoga is, you do works not for your desire even, but for the Lord. You think of the Lord and offer what you are doing to Him. So, that is the way of the Karma Yoga, and that's the way you can get rid of your desires and ego. Okay? So,
thank you.
Now, I go to the next sentence. For what we call ordinarily disinterested action is not really desireless. It is simply a replacement of certain smaller personal interests by other larger desires which have only the appearance of being impersonal. Virtue, country, mankind. We can discuss this a little bit. Okay, so what he's saying is, now, suppose I do something for myself. Okay, I want to eat a certain food and I eat it. I am doing it for myself. It is egoistic action. But now, suppose I have a friend and he says that I want to eat this, and you get that food for him. Now you may think that I am not doing anything for myself, I am doing it for somebody else. Is that desireless action? Samla is discussing that question. Okay? So, it is not that, because then your desire is directed towards self-satisfaction.
And what if one's desire was, I want to free India?
So, that desire is now self-satisfaction, it is directed to self-satisfaction. I have done this work. Okay? So, even when you do it for the divine, in the beginning it is a desire. But the very fact that you are directing it to something much nobler and higher will slowly change the character of the desire, and it can become aspiration.
Very good.
Okay, so
Thank you.
that's right. So this is what he is saying. And this, it can be directed towards virtue. Okay? You want to do something, I want to be virtuous. Okay? I don't want to drink or smoke. I don't want to be selfish. But there is a certain satisfaction, self-satisfaction that I am being virtuous. Okay? So that is the whole problem. So it can be also, as you said, I want to free my country. Okay? I want to do something for mankind. But the desire is for self-satisfaction. So long as the ego is there, that will come. So this is not desireless action. That's what Srindra is saying. He is saying that the object of your desire can become nobler and higher, but it is not yet desireless action. That's what he is saying. Okay? So, now we go to the next sentence. All action, moreover, as Krishna insists, is done by the gunas of Prakriti. This is something that you realize when your consciousness goes to the spiritual plane of consciousness in the self. The self is that consciousness in you lose your identification with body, mind, life, and therefore then you realize that you are not doing anything. It is nature which is making you do everything. Nature with her three modes of sattva, rajas, tamas. Nature is making you act, but you thought that you were acting, and it's very similar to a fly sitting on a flywheel. Okay? And the fly is going round because the wheel is going round. But the fly thinks that I am going round and round. Okay? So, this is what happens. Nature is putting desires into you, and you think that I have the desire. That's not true. Okay? Then nature is putting a thought into your mind, and you think that you are thinking, but actually it's not true. So when this identification with body, mind, life goes away, your consciousness or your soul has gone out of the body, mind, life. And the body, mind, life is continuing with its old actions. It is continuing. But now you see that without my will, the body, mind, life is acting. Then you realize that nature is the one that is using your body, mind, life as a puppet. So that's a liberation. The liberation of the soul is when you realize that you are not the doer. It is nature which is the doer. Okay? So, this is what he is explaining. Okay? The gunas of Prakriti are the body, mind, life, or the sattva, rajas, tamas. But by our nature, okay, in acting according to the Shastra, we are still acting according to our nature. He is going back to the niyatam karma. Okay? If you act according to the Shastra tells you, don't be selfish, be unselfish. Have you conquered desire? No. That's what is being said. Okay? So, if you do it for Shastric action, you are not doing Desireless action. It is still desire action. It is directed.
So,
Yeah.
So
tell me.
even the sattvic man is doing it by desire.
Yes, absolutely. But there it is subtler. You are doing it for self-satisfaction. You are doing it for virtue. You are not doing it for God. Okay, that's what Srivada also explains in the. He has written a book. No? I keep forgetting names. There's a book which he wrote. Actually, it was a speech that he gave. Okay, after coming out of jail. So he says that I was doing work for the liberation of the country. It was not selfish work. So why did the divine put me into jail? Then I am not being able to do that work. He is preventing me from doing desireless works. But he realized, and Sri Krishna told him, that attachment to your work which you had, okay, I have broken that attachment for you which you are unable to break. So then he realizes that the work can be done by somebody else, but he was taking self-satisfaction in the work that he was doing. There was a certain satisfaction. Not egoistic, but this desire is now directed towards satisfying yourself, that I am doing work for the country. It can be even for humanity, but it is not spiritual work, it is not desireless works.
But it would be from the sattvic point of view, would it not? These higher actions, would they be from sattva rather than rajas, tamas?
Yes, that's right. It could be from sattva, that's right. But it is not spiritual action. It is far superior to selfish action. But selfless action, so far as the ego is there, you are still acting according to your nature and so the ego has to go away. And that when the ego goes away, you are in the experience of the Brahmic consciousness, which is the self. Okay? You can call it the Atman, the self. It's a nirvana consciousness. There you realize that you are not doing anything. In any case, it was nature which was doing, and you were taking the full credit for it. Okay. There is a very interesting incident that happened, and I'll tell you, this may explain this thing a little bit. Nature is doing, and you are taking credit for the nature, okay, for what nature is doing. There were, Sunila has composed the music for Savitri, right? Okay, Sunila. And he had a sister who used to sing, okay. Her name was Minidhi. And one day, Sahana, you know also Sahana,
yes.
She was also a very good singer. So one day, Sahana comes to Minidhi and says that somebody was listening to the Savitri music and they thought that it was I who was singing and they praised me. Okay? But I took that praise for what it was worth. So this is exactly what happens in the same way here. You are taking credit for what nature is doing. Nature is doing, you are not doing anything at all. So when you realize that, when you go to the self, you realize that. Okay? Taking credit for something that you are not doing. Nature is doing. Okay? So when you realize that, you are free. Then you can do, that's all. Desireless action will come much later. Okay? So that's what is being said. So, even if this shastric action is not, as it usually is, a mere cover for our desires, prejudices, passions, egoisms, our personal, national, sectarian vanities. Okay? It could be personal, you are doing it for yourself. Second, you are doing it for the nation. So you think that you are doing something not for yourself but for the nation. Sectarian, I am doing it for society, I am doing it for family, I am not doing it for myself. But there is a certain satisfaction because the ego is there. Sentiments and preferences. Okay? But even otherwise, even at the purest, when you are doing it for the country, or you are doing it for humanitarianism, or you are doing it for your friend, not for yourself, still we obey a choice of our nature. Okay? It is still the nature which is acting. And if our nature were different and the gunas acted on our intelligence and will in some other combination, we would not accept the Shastra. but live according to our pleasure or our intellectual notions, or else break free from the social law to live the life of the solitary or the ascetic. So what he's saying is that even when you are virtuous, okay, you are actually not desireless. That's what he's saying. So we cannot become impersonal. Becoming impersonal means desireless. Okay? When you are impersonal, you are doing desireless works. By obeying something outside ourselves, we can't. Okay? Outside ourselves, country or family or even humanity. You are doing something for outside yourself. You cannot be impersonal. For we cannot so get outside ourselves. We can only do it by rising to the highest in ourselves, into our free soul and self, which is the same and one in all, and has therefore no personal interest. In other words, desireless action can become possible only when you rise out of your body-mind life and go to the self, which is above, level 2 if you want. So long as you have an ego, your actions are all at level 1, which is full of desires. The desire itself may be subtle or gross, but still it is desire. Okay? So, into our free soul and self, which is the same and one in all. When you go to the self, you realize that yourself is the self of all. That's a cosmic consciousness. I am there in everybody and everybody is there in me. There is no difference between me and the others. Okay? There is one self which is there common to all. That time you realize that you are not doing anything and you can do impersonal works at that time. We can, I am reading from there, we can only do it by rising to the highest in ourselves, into our free soul and self, which is the same and one in all, and has therefore no personal interest to the divine, no personal interest to the divine in our being, who possesses himself transcendent of cosmos and is therefore not bound by his cosmic works or his individual action. So, that is what the Gita teaches, and desirelessness is only a means to this end, not an aim in itself. Okay. Desirelessness will give you liberation. Okay. And once you are liberated, you can do desireless works. Yes, but how is it to be brought about? What is the way of getting rid of your desires? By doing all works with sacrifice as the only object, is a reply of the divine teacher. In other words, when you are doing whatever you are doing, do it for the Lord and not for yourself. Because when we are eating, we are enjoying what we are doing and we do it for ourselves. But before that, offer your food to the divine and think of the divine while you are eating. Okay? That would be offering your work to the divine. When you are, anything that you are doing, whatever work you are doing, do it for him and not for yourself. That's the Karma Yoga. By doing works otherwise than for sacrifice, this world of men is in bondage to works. If you do it with desire, then you are bound to your works. Okay? There is attachment. For sacrifice, practice works. O son of Kunti, okay? For sacrifice, practice works. Becoming free from all attachment. So actually it is inverted here, but the meaning is you should practice works for sacrifice and not for your own personal needs. Okay? So, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, become free from all attachment. When you do things for the divine, slowly the ego fritters out and gets frayed, and finally you are free. It is evident that all works and not merely sacrifice and social duties can be done in the spirit. Okay. All works, whatever you are doing, can be done in that way. Any action may be done either from the ego sense, narrow or enlarged, or for the sake of the divine. You can do it from three ways. You do it only for yourself, or you can do it for others, or you do it for the divine. Okay? Every action that you do can be done in three ways. Only for yourself, only for others, which is slightly more noble, and last, and that's a real solution, do it for the sake of the divine. From that it proceeds, by that it endures, to that it is directed. All your actions should be done for the divine. But so long,
I have many young friends who say that I don't know what the divine is. I don't know who the divine is. How can I sacrifice to him?
Yeah, okay. So he is at that level where desireless action is not possible. Then he has to find some advice, he has to see, and then this is the solution being given. Okay? Whatever is your conception of God, it may be very, very faulty, but doesn't matter. That's enough. This Srimad has dealt with it in the synthesis of yoga. You are asked to do something for the divine, but you don't know what the divine is. Start with your own limited conception, whatever it be. Slowly, the very fact that you are building a relation with the divine, that relation will take over. Okay? And that relation will teach you how to, because when you are doing for the divine, you are actually building a connection with the divine. And when the connection is made, the guidance also can be well received. When the connection is not made, how will you get the guidance?
Yes.
Now we are in contact with each other. If that guidance, the connection is not there, then I can't speak to you. The divine will not be able to speak to you. But if the connection is made, and the connection can be done by this sacrifice. Do it for the Lord in the most imperfect manner, doesn't matter. The connection will be made, and once the connection is made, you will be guided. That's an answer to that. Okay? So long as we are dominated by the ego sense, we cannot perceive or act in the spirit of this truth, but act for the satisfaction of the ego and in the spirit of the ego, otherwise than for sacrifice. So, egoism is the knot of the bondage. By acting Godwards without any thought of ego, we loosen this knot and finally arrive at freedom. You are not going to do that immediately. Finally, you will get to come to freedom. Act for the divine, karma yoga. That is the importance of the Gita. Stresses a huge amount of gives importance, tremendous importance to the karma yoga. Do works for the divine. The Jnana yoga and the Bhakti yoga are not interested in action. Okay? They do it by their own effort. But karma yoga is whatever work you are doing, you can retain that consciousness. When you are doing Jnana yoga, you have to sit down and concentrate, and your works will be imperfect. But when you start with karma yoga, the works also themselves become more and more perfect.
And what about with Bhakti yoga?
Yeah, bhakti also, you are not interested in the action. You are so satisfied with your relation with the divine, you are enjoying that relationship. You are not interested in the action. You ignore the imperfections of the action. Karma yoga is the most powerful to change your nature and the ego. Okay, so at first, however, the Gita takes up the Vedic statement of the idea of sacrifice and phrases the law of sacrifice in its current terms. This it does with a definite object. Okay? We have seen that the quarrel between renunciation and works has two forms. The opposition of Sankhya and Yoga, which is already in principle reconciled, and the opposition of Vedism and Vedantism, which the teacher has yet to reconcile. Okay? The teacher has already reconciled Sankhya and Yoga, okay? And now he has to reconcile Vedism and Vedantism. We will discuss this in detail the next time, because it will be a lot of discussion will be necessary. Vedism and Vedantism, which the teacher has yet to reconcile. The first is a larger statement of the opposition, in which the idea of works is general and wide. The Sankhya starts from the notion of the divine status as that of the immutable and inactive Purusha, which each soul is in reality, and makes an opposition between inactivity of Purusha and activity of Prakriti. So its logical culmination is cessation from all works, of all works. Yoga, Karma Yoga, he means Karma Yoga, starts from the notion of the divine as Ishvara, Lord of the operations of Prakriti, and therefore superior to them. And its logical culmination is not cessation of works, but the soul's superiority to them and freedom, even though doing all works. In the opposition of Vedism and Vedantism, works, karma, are restricted to Vedic works and sometimes even to Vedic sacrifice and ritualized works, all else being excluded as not useful for salvation. Vedism of the Mimamsakas insisted on them as the means. Vedantism, taking its stand on the Upanishads, looked on them as only a preliminary belonging to the state of ignorance, and in the end to be overpassed and rejected, an obstacle to the seeker of liberation. Vedism worshipped the Devas, the gods, with sacrifice, and held them to be the powers who assist our salvation. Vedantism was inclined to regard them as powers of the mental and material world opposed to our salvation. Men, says the Upanishad, are the cattle of the gods who do not desire man to know and be free. It saw the divine as the immutable Brahman who has to be attained not by works of sacrifice and worship but by knowledge. Works only lead to material results and to an inferior paradise. Therefore, they have to be renounced. Swamdeva is discussing the Sankhya philosophy, where they say that if you do works, you will feel attached to works. You will get attachment to works, and attachment will give you desire. So therefore, don't do any work. Okay, that's the Sankhya philosophy. But the Gita is exactly the opposite. You do works, but don't do it for yourself, and you will be liberated. Okay, so this is the, and there is an opposition between Sankhya and Yoga, and there is an opposition between Vedism and Vedantism. So, we will have a look at that next time very carefully. What we can do is, we will see the difference between Sankhya and Yoga. Okay? When Swamdeva uses the word Sankhya, he means the Sankhya philosophy, which says, concentrate in the mind and don't do any work, because works will give you attachment. It's true that if you start doing works in the physical world, attachment comes and desire will come. So this is one way, but it's not the ideal way, but it will also give you results. Sankhya, when you do stop doing works, okay? In the modern world, it's not possible to stop doing works. You have to work to earn your living. But anyway, in the ancient days, maybe if you had a joint family system, that may have been possible to a certain extent. You don't do any work, you do only your meditation. Sit in your attic room on top and start meditating. So, that is Sankhya's philosophy. And it does give you results, but it's a long way. Then the yoga, when Gita uses the word yoga here, it means karma yoga. Do works by all means. Okay? Do works, but do it in the spirit, which will make your ego less. Do it as a sacrifice to the gods. Okay. We are in the chapter Works and Sacrifice, and sacrifice is a very big principle in the Gita. Okay. Yajna, the word used is yajna. But it can be done in two ways, Vedism and Vedantism. Vedism is you use the Vedas for your sacrifice, but you see, physical sacrifice, not psychological sacrifice. It's a physical sacrifice. You sit and worship the gods and you ask them for whatever you want. Okay? You can want success in the world, you can want wealth, okay? And you can use the Vedic mantras for that purpose. That is Vedism. Okay? But Vedantism is different. It is using the sacrifice as a psychological means. Okay? You use this, all your actions you use as a means to approach God, and you do it through turning all your actions towards God and not for yourself. That would be the Vedantism. So that's a difference. But he has also spoken of Mimamsakas. So what is Mimamsa and what is the two things? Uttar Mimamsa and Purva Mimamsa. We'll discuss that a little bit next time in detail. Okay. We'll not be able to finish it in 5-10 minutes, so we'll keep it for next time.
Very good. I think it's a good idea. We covered a great deal. And remember, everyone, on Wednesday, the Life Divine. On Thursday, the Synthesis of Yoga. On Friday, Savitri. And on Saturday, Essays. All at the same time. Indian time, IST, 9:45 till 10:30. Namaste all. Thank you, Ranga. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Amin.
Okay.